In 1948, an engineer at Bell Labs made this mathematical decision that kind of accidentally doomed the 21st century.
Yeah, that's really one way to put it.
Right. I mean, he decided that information didn't actually need to mean anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
And today, that one highly specific engineering decision, well, it's the reason you can't tell if a video of a world leader is real or not. It's the reason our global institutions are just collapsing. And honestly, it's the underlying reason why your brain feels constantly fundamentally exhausted.
It is, it's the ultimate butterfly effect.
Yeah.
Because we built the entirety of our modern digital infrastructure. So the internet, social media, global finance, we built all of it on a structural definition of information that deliberately stripped out human meaning.
Wow.
And now we're all basically living with the psychological and, societal fallout of that architecture.
And that fallout and really the invisible architecture causing it, that is the mission of our deep dive today. Because we are taking on a massive interconnected journey through the works of Dr. Atiq Uriman. He is a political analyst, an AI strategist, and he's authored this incredible stack of 5 pivotal books that we are unpacking for you today.
A really dense stack of books.
Yes. Oh, totally. We are going to walk through the architecture of information, then the new information order, the narrative wars, future of humanity, and finally, mind over market.
Right, and just to set the table for you listening, the goal today is to sort of synthesize these 5 works, to understand the hidden structures of our reality.
Mm-hmm.
We are moving from the abstract nature of what information actually is right down into how it gets weaponized and ultimately arriving at practical, ethical tools you can actually use to navigate the modern marketplace.
Yeah, and here is the really important why for you, the listener.
Yeah.
We are living in an age of total information dominance, and trying to process our current reality using the old cognitive habits we grew up with. It's not just outdated, it's a critical vulnerability.
It is a massive weak link.
Exactly, a weak link that leads directly to failure. So whether you are, leading a corporation, working in government, studying for your future, or launching a startup, this deep dive is your survival guide.
Because we aren't just looking at a list of theories today.
No. We are stepping inside the control room of how humanity actually thinks and governs.
Which is fascinating. But to understand how our reality is being shaped, and in many cases actively manipulated, we have to start at the very foundation of how human beings process facts.
Right.
Which brings us to the first conceptual pillar in Dr. Riemann's work, which is the architecture of information.
So let's go back to that Bell Labs engineer. His name was Claude Shannon.
Yes, Claude Shannon.
And Dr. Riemann draws a really hard, provocative line between information and meaning based on Shannon's work.
He does.
But what was Shannon actually trying to do in 1948? Because I highly doubt his goal was to destroy modern epistemology, right?
Oh, far from it. I mean, Shannon was trying to solve a very specific mechanical problem. He was looking at how do you transmit a signal as efficiently as possible across a noisy channel.
Okay, so like physical wires.
Exactly. Think about early telephone lines. You have copper wires, you have static, you have signal degradation. Shannon wrote this paper called A Mathematical Theory of Communication, and it literally laid the groundwork for the digital age.
Wow.
But to solve the engineering problem, Shannon had to define information purely mathematically, so he defined it as the reduction of uncertainty.
Wait, okay, break that down for me. What does reduction of uncertainty actually mean in a practical sense?
So imagine you are flipping a coin.
Okay.
Before you flip it, there is uncertainty. Will it be heads or tails?
Right.
Once you flip it and see it's heads, your uncertainty is reduced. That outcome contains a specific measurable amount of information, in this case, 1 bit.
Oh, I see.
But notice what is totally missing from that equation.
Well, context, right. Like, it doesn't tell me why we are flipping the coin or who wins the bet or what the coin is even made of.
Precisely. Shannon explicitly ignored meaning.
Wow.
To an engineer managing a copper wire, the emotional or factual content of a telephone conversation just doesn't matter.
Right, the wire doesn't care.
Exactly. Whether you are transmitting a grocery list or a declaration of war, the underlying structural data, so the bits, the frequencies, the probabilities, it behaves exactly the same way.
That is wild to think about.
And the problem is that the channels of our age, right, the algorithms governing our social feeds, they inherited Shannon's engineering indifference.
Oh, man.
They are incredibly efficient at delivering structural information, but they possess zero capacity for meaning.
It makes me think of receiving a massive, heavy textbook in a language you don't speak at all.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Like, technically, that book is packed with structural information. It has chapters, syntax, complex ink patterns. But without the cognitive key in your brain to translate it, it possesses absolutely zero meaning for you.
Exactly.
Information is just potential. It requires a human mind to actually interpret it.
And this leads directly into Dr. Raymond's analysis of how our cognitive relationship with information has evolved over time. He outlines this massive historical shift from the age of discovery to what we are in right now, which is the age of delivery.
The age of discovery, I mean, that sounds inherently slower. It makes me think of literal physical scarcity.
Well, because it was. For most of human history, information was physically scarce.
Right.
Books were expensive to print. Libraries were geographically locked. Experts were really hard to find. If you wanted knowledge, you had to actively search for it. You had to travel, read, cross-reference.
Which takes a lot of time.
Yes. That active search required effort, focus, and a really high tolerance for delayed gratification. And because information was so difficult to produce and distribute, the institutions producing it, like universities and legacy publishers, they had a massive incentive to ensure its quality and accuracy.
But then we flipped the switch to the age of delivery, and suddenly I'm not searching for anything.
No, you're not.
I open my phone, and algorithms are just curating and delivering this customized fire hose of information directly to my eyeballs, constantly.
All day long.
The physical scarcity is entirely gone.
It is gone, but it has been replaced by a new, far more dangerous boundary constraint. Dr. Raymond introduces a concept here that he calls the person byte limit.
Okay, I love this phrase, person byte limit.
It's great, right?
It sounds like something out of a cyberpunk novel, but it describes something so painfully real. It's the hard cognitive boundary of what one single human mind can actually hold and process.
Exactly. Human cognitive capacity is finite. We have biological limits. You can only hold so much knowledge, maintain so much context, and understand so much nuance at any given time. And the information environment of the 21st century systematically, ruthlessly exceeds the person byte limit of every single person inhabiting it.
Which completely dismantles this romantic myth we have of the lone genius.
Oh, totally.
This idea that one brilliant person, like a Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk or some singular brilliant scientist, can just sit in a room, hold all the variables in their head, and understand the entire world.
It's mathematically impossible now.
Right. Riemann points out that this is impossible. He uses the example of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner to illustrate this, and it really clicked for me.
The Dreamliner is a phenomenal illustration of distributed knowledge. I mean, think about what it takes to build a commercial airliner today.
Millions of parts.
Millions of components. You have the fuselage built in Italy, the wings are engineered in Japan, the software is coded in the United States. No single engineer on Earth understands the whole plane.
Wait, not even the chief architect?
Not a chance.
Yep.
The aerodynamicist understands fluid dynamics, but they do not understand the intricacies of the supply chain logistics.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. And the software engineer understands the flight control code, but they don't deeply understand the metallurgy of the turbine blades. Knowledge no longer lives in one person. It lives in a vast, distributed network of specialized expertise. And the only way that plane safely takes to the sky is because of a very specific mechanism: trust.
Right, because the aerodynamicist has to implicitly trust the software engineer's code, even if they can't read it themselves. They trust the system of verification.
But here is where the friction happens.
Okay.
Because we have hit this person byte limit, and because modern knowledge is overwhelmingly complex, we are increasingly relying on artificial intelligence to manage it for us.
Yeah, that's true.
So the book details a massive societal shift from search to synthesis.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I use search engines every single day. I type a query into Google, it gives me a list of links.
Right.
Historically, I have to click the links, read the competing sources, judge their credibility based on my own critical thinking, and then synthesize the answer in my head. Like, I am doing the cognitive heavy lifting.
Exactly.
But now, with generative AI, we are changing that fundamental behavior.
We are entirely outsourcing the heavy lifting. With the rise of large language models, and specifically RGMLs, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, the AI does the synthesis for you.
So break down how a RAG model actually works for someone who isn't, an AI developer. How is it different from just asking ChatGPT a random question?
Good question. So standard LLMs generate text based on patterns they learn during their initial training, which means they can hallucinate or recall outdated information.
Right, they make stuff up.
Exactly. But a RAG model works differently. It is connected to a live database or a specific set of trusted documents.
Okay.
When you ask it a question, it first retrieves the exact relevant paragraphs from those trusted documents, and then it generates an answer based solely on that retrieved text.
Wow.
Yeah, so it reads the links, cross-references the data, and gives you a neatly packaged, seemingly authoritative paragraph.
So on the surface, that sounds amazing.
It does.
It sounds like the ultimate productivity hack. But Raymond warns about a massive glaring issue here, specifically in education, which he calls the performance paradox.
The paradox is that as students perform seemingly better output, their actual internal cognitive ability is decaying.
Wow.
Raymond actually divides AI use into two categories: detrimental offloading and beneficial offloading.
Okay, give me a scenario. What does detrimental offloading look like in, say, a high school or a university?
Let's say a student is assigned to read 3 conflicting historical essays about the causes of World War I.
Right.
The cognitive value of that assignment isn't just knowing the facts, it is the friction of holding opposing ideas, evaluating bias, and struggling to form a coherent thesis.
Yeah, because that struggle literally builds the neural pathways of critical thinking.
Exactly. So detrimental offloading is when the student just feeds the 3 essays into an AI and asks, summarize the main arguments and write a 500-word synthesis.
They completely bypass the core thinking entirely.
Entirely. Now contrast that with beneficial offloading. A student with strong foundational knowledge writes their own essay, struggles through the thesis, and then uses the AI to say, hey, check my logical flow, or format my citations, or play devil's advocate against my conclusion.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they are using the AI to handle the busy work or act as an inquiry catalyst so they can focus on higher order logic.
Well, wait, doesn't this just mean smart kids get smarter and everyone else falls behind?
Yeah.
Like, if AI is doing the synthesizing for us, aren't we just successfully accelerating past that person byte limit? Or is it more insidious than that?
It is incredibly insidious because Raymond points out that this creates what he calls a metacognitive equity gap.
Metacognitive equity gap.
Yes, students who already possess high prior knowledge and self-discipline, they use AI to elevate their capabilities. But students who struggle with self-regulation or who lack that foundational knowledge, they use it for detrimental offloading.
And what happens to them?
They achieve a false mastery. They hand in A-grade essays. They look like they are performing brilliantly on paper, but they are hollow inside. They are actively degrading their own cognitive architecture.
So the infrastructure of how we understand the world is physically atrophying in our brains.
Yes.
We are losing the muscle memory of deep synthesis.
And that exact degradation leads to a massive vulnerability. When your cognitive architecture is overwhelmed by the person byte limit and atrophied by offloading, you literally cannot process reality properly.
You become weakened.
Exactly, you become weakened. And in the natural world, when an organism is weakened, a new predatory structure takes over.
Wow. Because if our cognitive immune systems are entirely compromised by this, we aren't just confused, we are utterly defenseless.
Precisely.
What happens when a bad actor realizes the vault door is wide open? And that chilling realization brings us right to the threshold of Dr. Raymond's second book, The New Information Order, and what he terms the casino architecture of the modern web.
The casino architecture. It is perhaps the most defining characteristic of the modern digital experience.
Yeah.
You have to remember, the scarce resource in the global economy is no longer data.
Right. Data is everywhere.
Data is infinitely abundant. It's practically worthless on its own. The most valuable, scarce resource on planet Earth today is human attention.
The attention economy.
Yes. Dr. Raymond builds heavily here on Shoshana Zuboff's concept of surveillance capitalism.
Okay.
The platforms, social media, news aggregators, video feeds, they are not built to inform you. Their architecture is not designed to make you smarter or happier or more socially connected.
No, definitely not.
They are engineered with one singular imperative,
Yeah.
to keep you on the platform for as many seconds as humanly possible so your attention can be packaged and sold to advertisers.
And what's the best way to hold human attention? I mean, it's not nuance. It's not a deeply researched, balanced 30-page essay.
Oh.
It's outrage. It's fear. It's extreme novelty.
The science of holding human attention is fundamentally the science of emotional manipulation. I mean, think about the physical architecture of a Las Vegas casino. Right. There are no clocks on the walls. There are no windows to show you the sun is coming up. The carpets are dizzying, the lights are bright, and the slot machines use variable reward schedules.
Which is the exact same psychological mechanism that keeps a rat pressing a lever for food.
Exactly. You never know if the next pull of the lever or, the next swipe of the thumb on your feed will yield a massive dopamine hit or nothing at all.
So you just keep swiping.
You just keep swiping. And this continuous engineered engagement leads to a societal diagnosis that Dr. Raymond calls information obesity.
Okay, I really want to dig into this metaphor because I hear the phrase information obesity, and my first thought is, okay, well, this is just a rebranded term for media overload.
Sure, people say that.
Right. Like, we have been complaining about kids watching too much TV since the 1980s. How is this actually different?
It is structurally and metabolically completely different.
How so?
Think about physical nutritional obesity. It isn't just a matter of eating a larger volume of carrots and broccoli.
Right.
It is about consuming highly processed calories, sugar, trans fats that the body cannot usefully metabolize. It's energy that doesn't fuel cellular function. It just stores as fat, places stress on the organs, and eventually causes metabolic syndrome.
Oh, wow. So translating that to our brains.
With information obesity follows the exact same metabolic logic. You are consuming vast, unprecedented quantities of highly processed, emotionally activating content.
Memes, outrage bait, out-of-context video clips.
Yes, and your mind cannot metabolize this content into actionable knowledge or wisdom. It doesn't help you build a better life or, understand your neighbor.
No.
It simply accumulates in your nervous system as chronic anxiety, ambient outrage, and a terrifyingly fragile sense of false certainty.
The algorithms engineer continuous appetite without ever providing satiation. Like, you can scroll TikTok or X for 3 hours and you feel completely stuffed and exhausted. But intellectually, you are starving.
Epistemically starved, yes. And when that condition becomes acute, it evolves into a much more dangerous state, which he calls digital sepsis.
Sepsis, that is a strong medical term. I mean, sepsis is what kills you when an infection goes wrong.
Exactly. In a biological body, sepsis is a life-threatening condition where the immune system massively overreacts to an infection, and in its panic, it starts attacking and damaging the body's own tissues and organs.
Oh, man.
Digital sepsis is the exact societal equivalent. When a population is constantly bombarded by algorithmically amplified outrage triggers, tragedy, and tribal warfare, their collective cognitive immune system just goes into overdrive.
We lose the ability to differentiate between a minor disagreement and a mortal threat.
That's exactly it. Every political debate becomes an apocalyptic battle between good and evil. A badly worded tweet from a celebrity is treated with the same emotional intensity as a declaration of war. The society just entirely loses its capacity for measured response.
And the book points out that this is incredibly dangerous, especially when we look at how different populations around the world experience this onset. Dr. Riemann dives deeply into a phenomenon called the cognitive leapfrog.
Yes.
Specifically focusing on the global south. And he uses Pakistan as a primary laboratory for this theory. I found this part fascinating. Walk me through the cognitive leapfrog.
This is a really crucial anthropological insight. In the West, society went through a long, century-spanning historical arc of print literacy.
Right, the printing press.
Right. After the Gutenberg Press, we had hundreds of years where engaging with long-form text was the primary mode of deep communication. And print literacy physically trains the human brain.
How does it train it?
It requires linear, sequential thought. It builds a tolerance for delayed gratification, like you have to read 300 pages to get the payoff. And it trains you to evaluate evidence based on structured arguments.
So print literacy is basically cognitive training wheels for logic.
That is a perfect way to put it, yes. But in much of the global south, including Pakistan, a massive portion of the population leapfrogged this developmental phase entirely.
Wow.
They jumped straight from a predominantly oral tradition where information is highly local, deeply social, and culturally embedded directly to cheap, algorithmically curated smartphones.
They completely bypassed the print literacy phase.
Entirely.
So they never developed the societal level cognitive training wheels for evaluating mass media logically.
And the consequence of that leapfrog is an information environment that is structurally hyper-vulnerable. You have hundreds of millions of people who are suddenly maximally connected to the global digital grid, but minimally equipped to defend against the emotional manipulation of a casino-architected algorithm.
Which perfectly explains the terrifying erosion of institutional trust we are seeing right now. Not just globally, but intensely in these leapfrog regions.
Yes.
Because institutions like legacy media, academia, government bodies, they used to be the gatekeepers of reality.
Right.
Raymond calls them slow, imperfect trust-generating machines.
They were epistemological structures. I mean, think about a traditional newspaper newsroom in the 1990s.
Okay.
Before a story was published, it went through reporters, fact-checkers, editors, legal counsel. That friction existed to ask questions that algorithms simply do not ask.
Like what?
Like, is this actually true? Are there two sources? Is there a conflict of interest? But today, algorithmic authority has entirely replaced editorial authority.
The platform flattens everything.
Yes. A fabricated video generated by a hostile state's troll farm gets the exact same visual treatment on your feed, the same size thumbnail, the same engagement metrics, the same share buttons as a meticulously verified report from a legacy newsroom.
It's terrifying.
The platform democratizes credibility without democratizing any of the necessary accountability.
So how do governments and large institutions fix this? Because you can't just put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah.
You can't ban smartphones or force everyone to start reading broadsheet newspapers again.
No, you can't.
Raymond offers a governance solution here that I thought was brilliantly phrased. He says, keep the walls, open the windows. What does that actually look like in practice?
So this addresses the modern problem of institutional silos. In corporate and government culture, we are often told that silos are bad, that the finance department shouldn't be cut off from the engineering department, or the intelligence agency shouldn't be cut off from local law enforcement.
All right, everyone wants synergy.
But Raymond argues that silos actually serve a vital purpose. They provide necessary accountability, deep specialized expertise, and security.
Because you don't want everyone having access to everything. That's chaos.
Right. So Raymond says, don't destroy the silos, keep the walls, but you have to open windows between them. He calls it being deep in your part, aware of the whole.
Oh, I like that.
You use AI and cross-domain information sharing networks so that, for example, the finance officer can clearly see what a 10% budget cut will do to the engineering timeline on the ground without the finance officer actually managing the engineers.
Yeah.
It creates shared situational awareness without destroying organizational structure.
And to ground this theory in brutal reality, the book analyzes case studies from Pakistan's counterterrorism efforts between roughly 2008 and 2014.
Yes.
And I just want to pause here and be very clear for our listener. We are looking at this purely as an academic analysis of communication theory.
Absolutely.
We are not taking political sides or endorsing policies here. We are impartially reporting on the content. Dr. Riemann uses this intense historical period to explain the concepts of securitization and narrative framing. So how did the information architecture fail during that specific time?
It is a textbook example of how the structure of information dictates political reality. Raymond applies the Copenhagen School of Securitization Theory.
Okay, what is that?
In simple terms, this theory states that for a government to take extraordinary, massive action against a threat, it first has to successfully convince the public that the threat is existential. It has to securitize the issue through a cohesive narrative.
But Pakistan was facing a horrific wave of violence during those years. The threat was obviously real. Why didn't the narrative coalesce?
Because of how the media ecosystem framed the information, the media relied heavily on episodic framing.
Episodic framing.
Yes. They covered each bombing, each terrorist attack, as an isolated, sensationalized incident, a localized tragedy, a specific security failure of the day. They treated it like local crime reporting.
Oh.
What they failed to do is use thematic framing. They didn't connect all these disparate episodes into a single, cohesive national narrative of an existential war.
And when you cover a war like a series of disconnected car crashes, the public reaction completely changes.
Completely.
Because the events were framed episodically, the public felt numbed resignation and localized grief rather than a mobilized national resolve.
Exactly.
The state struggled to achieve a unified narrative because the information architecture itself was fractured and optimized for episodic outrage, not thematic understanding.
Exactly. The way an information system frames a problem directly determines whether a society can physically mobilize a coherent response to it. And this brings us to the profound moral weight of Dr. Raymond's second book, the concept of knowledge as oxygen.
Man, this gave me chills when I read it.
It's powerful.
Historically, if a government failed to provide for its people, if a famine hit or an economic policy collapsed, the leaders could claim genuine incapacity.
Right.
The data was too hard to gather, the experts were too far away, communication was too slow. They could just say, well, we just didn't know in time. But now,
Knowledge is ubiquitous. It's like oxygen. A local district administrator in rural Punjab today has access to the same medical research, agricultural satellite data, and economic modeling as a senior researcher at Oxford or MIT.
Wow.
The friction of access is entirely gone. Therefore, Raymond argues, since access to knowledge is free and instantaneous, institutional failure is no longer a tragedy of incapacity.
It is a moral choice.
It is a moral choice. If a policy fails because of ignorance today, it is not because the institution couldn't find the information. It is because the institution deliberately chose to hold its breath.
That is heavy. Okay, so let's connect the dots here. If a population is suffering from digital sepsis, their institutional trust is fundamentally broken by algorithmic platforms. They lack the cognitive training wheels to evaluate truth, and their institutions are failing despite swimming in an ocean of knowledge. They aren't just confused.
Yeah.
They are the perfect targets.
They are the ideal soft targets for cognitive warfare. And that vulnerability isn't accidental. It is an actively exploited battlefield.
Right.
Which leads us directly out of the theory of the second book and into the terrifying thriller-esque reality of the third, which is the narrative wars.
This is where the reading experience gets really wild, because Dr. Ryman shifts gears completely in this book. He uses a narrative, almost cinematic thriller format to explain cognitive warfare.
It's brilliant.
We are introduced to a character, a UN strategist named Layla Navarro, and the book opens with her sitting in a high-rise office in Singapore at 3:14 in the morning, staring at screens, watching the global information grid completely melt down in real time.
It is a brilliant pedagogical tool. By embodying these dense, abstract theories into a human character, the threat becomes visceral. Layla isn't just looking at data, she's watching a phenomenon called trimodal synchronization.
Trimodal synchronization. What is Layla actually seeing on those screens?
She is watching 3 massive, seemingly completely unrelated protests erupting across the globe at the exact same second.
Okay.
There is a violent riot over a digital currency tax in London. Simultaneously, there is a massive outrage over water-sharing rights in Islamabad. And at the exact same moment, a healthcare panic is spilling into the streets of New York.
Wow.
Geographically, politically, and culturally, these events have absolutely nothing to do with each other.
But Layla is an analyst. She starts running the text of the social media posts fueling these riots through her software. And she realizes they are using the exact same linguistic markers.
Yes. The syntactic cadences, the emotional trigger words, the frequency of the posts, they are identical, just translated into different languages and localized contexts.
That was not organic.
It's not organic human behavior at all. It is a manufactured pulse. It is the coordinated work of a shadowy, decentralized group in the book known simply as the Architects.
The Architects, I mean, they sound like James Bond villains, but what they represent is so much more grounded and dangerous.
Very much so.
They represent the ultimate evolution of information weaponization. And what blew my mind is that the Architects aren't trying to persuade anyone of a specific political ideology. That's old school propaganda. They're using a weapon called cognitive friction.
This is the evolution of warfare. The goal of cognitive friction is to invert the natural order of truth.
How do they do that?
They engineer the information environment so that finding the actual truth is exhausting, boring, and computationally expensive for the human brain. Meanwhile, consuming their lies is completely frictionless, highly entertaining, and emotionally validating.
Wow. And to execute this, the Architects rely on a military concept called the OODA loop. Now, I've heard of this in the context of fighter pilots, but how does it apply to Twitter feeds and deepfakes?
Right. The OODA loop stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, Act. It was developed by military strategist John Boyd to explain how fighter pilots win dogfights.
Okay.
The pilot who can cycle through those 4 steps faster gets inside the opponent's decision-making cycle, causing the opponent to react to old information and eventually panic and crash. In cognitive warfare, the Architects apply the OODA loop to the global news cycle.
So if they can generate and push a fabricated narrative out globally faster than a government can even observe and orient themselves to what is happening, the Architects basically control reality.
Exactly.
The government is constantly on defense, trying to debunk a lie that has already circled the globe.
Exactly. And the primary weapon they use to achieve this speed and chaos is something called the liar's dividend. This is arguably the most chilling concept in the entire book.
Let's talk about the liar's dividend, because in the story, the Architects release a flawless deepfake video of the Pakistani Prime Minister appearing to order a preemptive nuclear strike.
Yes.
It's terrifying. But the true damage isn't just the panic of that specific video, right?
Yes. The liar's dividend works like this. When bad actors flood the zone with high-fidelity, indistinguishable fakes, the public eventually realizes they are being tricked.
Sure.
But the result isn't that the public becomes smarter. The result is that the public simply stops believing in reality entirely. They assume everything is a fake.
It's like throwing a bucket of toxic mud into a small pool of drinking water.
Oh, that's good.
You don't actually need to convince anyone that the mud is clean or that the water is safe. You just need to make the water so murky and disgusting that everyone is entirely too terrified to take a drink. You paralyze them with doubt.
That is the perfect analogy. The goal of modern disinformation isn't always to make you believe a specific lie. It's to induce absolute epistemic paralysis. If nothing is true, then no one can be held accountable, and power can operate with absolute impunity.
But wait, what happens when the government steps in to fix it? Like
Yeah.
in the book, the authorities try to debunk the deepfake of the prime minister. They show the data, they prove it's AI generated, but Riemann points out that this backfires entirely due to the continued influence effect.
Yeah, human psychology is incredibly flawed here. The continued influence effect dictates that the human brain remembers the intense emotional resonance of the original lie much more strongly than the dry, factual debunking.
Oh, man.
Furthermore, just the act of repeating the lie in order to debunk it physically reinforces the neural pathway of the lie in the listener's memory. Over time, the brain forgets the debunking part and just remembers the association, Prime Minister and nuclear strike.
So the debunking literally fertilizes the lie.
It does.
And part of why that original fake was so sticky was because of how it was made. The book details the technology of Jan's generative adversarial networks.
Explain what the adversarial part means, because it's not just a computer drawing a face.
No, it's much more complex. A Jan is composed of two AI networks locked in a deathmatch.
Okay.
One network is the generator, the counterfeiter trying to create a fake image. The other network is the discriminator, the cop trying to spot the fake. They trade against each other millions of times a second.
Millions of times.
Yes. The generator creates a fake. The discriminator flags the pixel flaws, so the generator learns and tries again. It loops until the discriminator can no longer mathematically tell the difference between the fake and reality.
And the terrifying part is that they aren't just perfecting lighting and skin texture anymore.
No.
They're crossing the visual authenticity gap. Raymond notes that these AI models are actually modeling human stress responses. They program the fake prime minister to have a microtremor in his voice. They program a slight eyelid twitch, an anxious swallow, because the architects understand human biology. We are wired by millions of years of evolution to respond to emotional authenticity over factual accuracy.
All right.
A mathematically perfect, flawless video looks fake to us. A video where the speaker looks stressed, flawed, and terrified, feels deeply, viscerally real. They engineer the fake to feel more real than the truth.
And they scale this manipulation up through consensus manufacturing and psychographic profiling.
Yes. They don't just broadcast one message. By scraping your data, they know your moral foundations, whether you value authority, fairness, purity, or liberty. They fragment society into hyper-personalized, invisible propaganda echo chambers. They feed you a customized version of reality where it appears that every sane person on Earth agrees with you, and anyone who disagrees isn't just factually wrong, they are a malicious, evil threat to your existence.
So, as a listener sitting here realizing my brain is just entirely outgunned by adversarial AI networks and psychographic profiling, how does an individual citizen even begin to fight back?
It's tough.
How do I practice defense against digital sepsis and cognitive friction?
Raymond offers very practical individual protocols, and the most immediate ground-level defense is the 60-second pause.
Just a minute of silence.
It is deliberate friction. When you are scrolling and you see a piece of content that triggers an immediate, massive spike of emotion, outrage, terror, or even profound tribal unity, you must stop.
Okay.
You do not hit share. You do not write a blistering comment. You sit with it for 60 seconds. You must consciously recognize that your limbic system, your lizard brain, is being actively targeted by a casino-architected algorithm designed to bypass your prefrontal cortex.
You force your brain to power up the higher-order logic centers. You refuse to be the carrier pigeon for the contagion.
Exactly.
But what about on a larger organizational scale? The book argues for building a resilience framework and analog backups.
This is the macro defense. If the digital grid is totally compromised, if you reach a point where you cannot implicitly trust video, audio, or text delivered through a screen, The only defense remaining is physical reality.
Physical reality.
Physical documentation, face-to-face, human-to-human reporting. Organizations must deliberately build trust networks that exist entirely outside the digital architecture.
Because the events in the narrative wars, the deep fakes, the manufactured riots, the paralysis, they aren't just cool concepts for a spy novel.
No, not at all.
Layla Navarro's story is a direct warning. Riemann argues these are the exact precursors to the societal fragility that will define our immediate future, which seamlessly transitions us into the fourth book, which is essentially a map of the next decade, Future of Humanity, focusing on 2025 to 2035 and the era he calls the embryonic decade.
The embryonic decade. It is the crucible we are entering right now. Dr. Riemann describes the specific 10-year window as a massive, unavoidable collision of three distinct forces.
What are they?
The exponential technology force of artificial intelligence, the rigid, outdated governance force of our institutions, and the messy biological reality of the human condition.
The book opens by exploring a really radical, almost fatalistic hypothesis called symbolic life. What does it mean that humanity might transition into a symbolic life?
The theory of symbolic life posits that human beings are undergoing a fundamental evolutionary shift. We are transitioning from autonomous, free-thinking biological individuals into something resembling cellular components of a vast, planetary, techno-organizational entity.
Whoa.
In this view, we are just nodes in a thermodynamic system of data processing, reacting predictably to algorithmic stimuli, serving the growth of the technological machine.
Okay, I have to push back hard on this.
Please do.
Because when I read about algorithms controlling our dopamine, deciding our news, moving our financial markets in milliseconds, it's easy to feel hopeless.
Very easy.
But are we truly losing our fundamental human agency to the laws of thermodynamics and technology? Or is symbolic life just a really convenient, high-minded excuse for politicians and corporate leaders who are utterly failing at their jobs? Like, don't blame me for the economy, the algorithm is in charge.
It is absolutely an excuse, and that is precisely Dr. Raymond's core argument.
Oh, really?
Yes. He introduces the theory of symbolic life specifically to violently dismantle it. He calls this surrender the determinism trap.
The determinism trap, assuming the future is already written by the tech.
Exactly. It is the intellectual error of confusing a current trajectory with a fixed, unchangeable destiny. Just because technology is currently pulling us toward total algorithmic integration and surveillance capitalism does not mean we are destined to lose our humanity to it.
Right.
Forces do not make decisions. Human beings do. The real crisis of the embryonic decade isn't that AI is an unstoppable god. The crisis is that the social compact has broken down.
Okay, let's define the social compact, because it's the glue holding all this together. The basic idea is that citizens agree to surrender a certain amount of their absolute autonomy and taxes to institutions, the government, the courts, the banks, in exchange for three specific things: protection, explanation, and recourse.
Correct. The state protects you from the brutal complexities and dangers of the world. It explains the rules to you clearly so you can navigate society, and it provides a court of law or recourse when you are wronged. Right.
But consider the reality of the digital age. Can institutions protect your data from a massive hack?
No.
Can they explain exactly why a black box algorithm denied your mortgage application or fired you?
Definitely not.
Do they offer meaningful, swift recourse when you suffer algorithmic harm?
No.
The institutions are failing to uphold their end of the bargain.
And the book points out that when those three pillars, protection, explanation, and recourse collapse, radicalization is the rational downstream consequence.
This is a vital point to understand.
Yeah.
When a citizen is abandoned by the system, when they are stripped of protection, bewildered by unexplainable algorithms, and denied recourse, turning to extreme, anti-system ideologies isn't an irrational psychological break. It is the only logical choice left to regain a sense of agency.
And this collision between failing institutions and disruptive tech is happening most intensely in the global south. Riemann uses Pakistan's immense youth demographic as the ultimate stress test for global civilizational resilience. It is the perfect laboratory for the embryonic decade. Pakistan has a massive population with a median age well under 25. You have tens of millions of young people entering a labor market that is simultaneously being hollowed out and transformed by AI, and they are governed by state institutions that often lack the technical capacity to even understand the disruption, let alone regulate it.
It's powder keg.
Yeah.
But Riemann also points out that this youth bulge is simultaneously the greatest vulnerability and the most massive asset imaginable.
Yes.
Because young people don't have decades of institutional baggage. They don't have to unlearn the old, slow ways of doing things. They possess incredible innate adaptive capacity.
And this brings us to the ultimate fork in the road for the embryonic decade. We're facing two distinct futures. Will this technological wave become an algorithmic cage where human agency is permanently erased by surveillance capitalism and cognitive warfare?
Oh.
Or will humanity harness it for an emancipatory cognitive leapfrog?
Paint the picture of the emancipatory leapfrog. What does the optimistic future actually look like?
Imagine an AI system completely detached from the casino architecture, designed specifically to democratize expertise. Imagine an AI providing highly accurate, hyper-localized, native language agricultural modeling to a rural farmer in Punjab, allowing them to double crop yields despite climate change.
That's amazing.
Imagine an AI acting as a personalized, infinitely patient molecular biology tutor to a 12-year-old student in Lagos. AI has the potential to bridge the massive gap between elite human cognition and ground-level reality. It can distribute the oxygen of knowledge evenly across the globe.
It is an incredibly compelling, hopeful vision of what we could build if we escape the determinism trap.
Yes, it is.
But while the fate of humanity and global institutions is being decided on this grand macro level over the next 10 years, the person listening to this deep dive is operating on a micro level right now.
They are.
They have to wake up tomorrow. They are running businesses, leading teams, trying to sell a product or a service, trying to provide for their families. How do we ethically navigate, communicate, and influence people within this exact compromised psychological architecture we just spent an hour describing?
Right.
That transition brings us to the fifth and final book in our journey, Mind Over Market.
Mind Over Market is where the rubber really meets the road. It takes all the profound psychological insights from the previous 4 books, how the human brain processes information, how algorithms manipulate our emotions, how trust is built and broken in a post-truth world, and it applies those insights directly to commerce, leadership, and entrepreneurship.
And the very first thing Raymond does in this book is dismantle one of the foundational lies of classical economics, the myth of the rational actor.
Oh, yes.
We are taught in Business 101 that consumers are logical calculators. They weigh the costs, evaluate the features, consider the benefits, and make a rational choice.
And the reality is, they absolutely do not. The previous books proved this. Human beings are emotional, status-conscious, story-driven, heavily biased creatures operating under a crushing person-bite limit. Marketing, therefore, is not a spreadsheet exercise.
Right.
Dr. Remen argues it is deeply, fundamentally psychological, and crucially, when done ethically, marketing is an act of profound service.
I love that.
It is the mechanism of connecting real people with real solutions that they actually need but are just too overwhelmed to find.
To teach us how to do that ethically, the book pulls heavily from Robert Cialdini's classic 6 Pillars of Influence.
Yes.
And the pillar that Remen highlights brilliantly is reciprocity. He uses this incredible vivid example of the Hare Krishnas operating in American airports in the 1970s. Walk us through the psychology of the flower.
The Hare Krishna Airport strategy is a masterclass in human behavioral psychology. Their goal was to solicit donations from travelers who were rushing to their gates, stressed and totally uninterested in stocking. But instead of just asking for money, a Hare Krishna member would step into the traveler's path and press a flower into their hand.
A completely unsolicited gift.
Yes, and if the traveler tried to hand it back and say, "I don't want this," the Krishna would refuse. They would say, "No, it is our gift to you."
Wow.
The moment the traveler accepted the flower, an ancient, evolutionarily hardwired social script was triggered in their brain.
The psychological debt of reciprocity. Because as a human, receiving an unsolicited gift creates an almost physical discomfort, an undeniable obligation to return the favor.
Exactly.
The traveler would feel so profoundly uncomfortable with this unreciprocated gift that they would almost always reach into their pocket and hand over $1 or $2 just to clear the invisible psychological debt.
They essentially bought their way out of the social obligation. Now, for modern entrepreneurs and marketers, the ethical application of this hardwired quirk is leading with genuine massive value. You don't interrupt someone's day and immediately ask for a sale. You give away something genuinely useful first. A free software tool, a deeply researched white paper, a comprehensive audit. You trigger the powerful force of reciprocity through actual generosity, building trust before a transaction ever occurs.
But generosity alone isn't enough if you look exactly like your competitors.
No.
The book dives deep into Blue Ocean Strategy by W. Chan Kim and Renee Mauborgne. I love this concept. The idea is that most businesses are fighting in the red ocean, a market space overflowing with competitors, where the water is bloody from everyone fighting over the exact same shrinking profit margins.
Right.
The goal is to stop fighting and create a blue ocean of completely uncontested, brand new market space.
And Remen highlights the specific tool used to map out a blue ocean, which is the ERRC grid.
What does that stand for?
That stands for eliminate, reduce, raise, create. Instead of just trying to be 5% better than your competitor, you look at your entire industry and ask 4 radical questions. What factors that the industry takes for granted can I completely eliminate? What factors can I reduce well below the industry standard? What factors can I raise well above standard? And what brand new factors can I create that have never been offered before?
The classic example Raymond uses here, which perfectly illustrates the ERRC grid, is Cirque du Soleil.
Such a great example.
In the 1980s, the circus industry was a dying red ocean. Ringling Brothers was bleeding money, fighting animal rights activists, and competing with video games for kids' attention.
So Cirque du Soleil applied the grid. What did they eliminate? They completely eliminated animal acts, which were expensive and controversial. They eliminated the star performers and the 3-ring format.
Wow.
What did they reduce? They reduced the slapstick humor and danger. What did they raise? They radically raised the artistic value, the acrobatics, the lighting, and the ticket price.
And what did they create?
They created a completely new hybrid, a theater circus experience aimed at adults and corporate clients, not kids. They made the competition entirely irrelevant. They sailed into a blue ocean.
But here's the friction point. Once you use the ERRC grid and create this incredible, unique blue ocean value, how do you actually communicate it to a population suffering from information obesity?
Right, that's the challenge.
If I just buy billboard space and list the 10 unique features of my new product, people are going to ignore me. Because, as we learned in Book 1, the brain discards complex, confusing information to save calorie energy.
This is where Riemann introduces the supreme power of story, heavily referencing Donald Miller's StoryBrand framework. The human brain is biologically hardwired for narrative.
How so?
For thousands of years, survival information was passed down through stories. The structure is universal. A character has a problem. They meet a guide who understands their fear. The guide gives them a plan, calls them to action, and that action results in either success or avoids failure.
It's the plot of Star Wars, it's the plot of Lord of the Rings, and it should be the plot of your marketing.
Exactly. The fatal mistake most companies make is framing themselves as the hero of the story. Look at our legacy, look at our big building, look at our awards. The customer's brain tunes that out immediately because the customer is the hero of their own life. When you frame your marketing as a story where the customer is the hero battling a problem and you are simply the wise guide equipped with the tool to help them win, the brain deeply engages. It doesn't cost cognitive energy to process a clear story. It is natural.
Look at Apple's famous Think It Different campaign in 1997. Steve Jobs comes back to a failing, nearly bankrupt company. He doesn't run ads talking about RAM, processor speed, or motherboard architecture.
No, he doesn't.
He runs an ad showing black and white footage of Albert Einstein, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Amelia Earhart. He wasn't selling computers as calculators. He was selling status and identity.
Exactly.
The story was, if you buy this beige box, you are part of the royal tribe. You are a genius who changes the world.
That is the power of narrative identity. But Riemann acknowledges that for most B2B companies or local service businesses, you can't just run a Think Different ad and expect results.
No.
You have to build methodical trust. To do that, he introduces education-based marketing and a concept from Chet Holmes called the stadium pitch.
I found the stadium pitch to be such a clarifying mental model. Imagine you are standing on the 50-yard line of a massive football stadium. Every single seat is filled with your ideal potential customer.
Okay.
If you grab the microphone and say, "Hi, I have the best accounting software at the lowest price. Who wants to buy?" What happens?
Statistically, only about 3% of any given market is actively in the buying window at that exact moment. So 3% might cheer. But the other 97% of the stadium people who aren't ready to buy today or don't even realize they have an accounting problem yet, they will groan, tune you out, or literally get up and leave the stadium.
You bored them with a sales pitch.
But if you change the script, If you stand on the 50-yard line and say, I am going to teach you the 5 biggest financial threats that will bankrupt companies in our industry over the next decade, and step by step how to survive them, what happens?
Suddenly, 100% of the stadium is listening. You have captured their attention, not by asking for their money, but by giving away your absolute best thinking for free. That is education-based marketing.
Exactly.
You attract the 97% by becoming their trusted guide. You educate them, you nurture them, you help them understand their own problems. And eventually, when they enter that 3% buying window, you are the only logical choice to sell them the implementation.
That's the power of it.
So let me ask the hard question here. If I am an entrepreneur listening to this, and I say, great, I'm going to start doing education-based marketing, I'm going to launch a podcast, write a blog, shoot YouTube videos, aren't I just adding a massive amount of noise to the exact information obesity problem we diagnosed earlier?
That is the ultimate tension.
How do I stand out as a trusted guide without just becoming another piece of algorithmic trash clogging up someone's feed?
Yes. Creating more content into the void often just contributes to the noise. The brain discards confusing info, but it also violently filters out info from untrusted, unfamiliar sources. Which brings us to the final, most crucial strategy in the book, the Dream 100.
The Dream 100. It's about fundamentally changing where and how you broadcast. It's telling you to stop wide net horizontal marketing.
Yeah.
Stop trying to go viral to reach everyone on Earth.
Go intensely vertical. The Dream 100 strategy demands that you identify the 100 specific, highly concentrated trust ecosystems where your ideal audience already lives and congregates.
Okay.
This isn't about buying Facebook ads. This is identifying 20 specific niche podcasts, 15 highly respected industry newsletters, 10 key conference organizers, 5 authoritative YouTube channels.
These entities, these hosts and creators have already spent years doing the agonizing, slow work of building actual trust with the exact audience you want to reach.
Exactly. They are the gatekeepers of trust. Your job as an entrepreneur is not to scream into the void. Your job is to build genuine, high-value, reciprocal relationships with those 100 specific gatekeepers. You serve them. You bring value to their platforms.
You are essentially borrowing their trust. When you appear as a guest on a highly respected podcast, the listener automatically transfers a significant portion of their parasocial trust in the host directly over to you. You bypass the algorithmic casino entirely because you have been vetted by a trusted human being.
And if we connect this all the way back to Dr. Ryman's earlier books, back to the concept of epistemic sovereignty in the narrative wars, we realize that trust is the ultimate foundational currency of the 21st century.
It really is.
In a world suffering from the liar's dividend, where deepfakes are everywhere, where cognitive friction is weaponized, and where legacy institutions are crumbling, establishing genuine human-to-human authority and reciprocity is the only way a brand, a leader, or an individual survives.
It is truly one massive interconnected web. We started by looking at the invisible mathematical architecture of information itself.
Yeah.
We saw how Claude Shannon stripped it of meaning for the sake of engineering, and how the human mind has struggled to process the sheer volume of it ever since, hitting our person byte limit.
We examine how the casino architecture of the tech platforms exploits that exact cognitive limit, feeding us emotional junk food that results in information obesity and, ultimately, the societal immune failure of digital sepsis.
We walked through the terrifying reality of the narrative wars. We saw how bad actors use OODA loops, Jans, and the liar's dividend to intentionally fracture our shared reality, paralyzing us with cognitive friction.
We looked ahead to the embryonic decade, mapping the unavoidable collision of AI, failed governance, and human nature. We highlighted the critical choice facing the Global South: succumb to the determinism trap of an algorithmic cage, or harness the technology for an emancipatory cognitive leapfrog.
And finally, we brought it all the way down to the ground. We explored how to use the psychology of reciprocity, the ERRC grid of blue ocean strategy, the evolutionary power of story, and the deep relationship building of the Dream 100 to ethically navigate the market and be a builder of real trust.
It is a comprehensive, profoundly necessary roadmap of the invisible structures that govern every aspect of our lives.
And so, to you listening, dealing with information using the habits of the past is no longer just quaint. It is a critical weakness.
Yes, it is.
Whether you are leading a nation, running a startup, or simply scrolling on your phone late at night, you are actively participating in this architecture. You are either being manipulated by its casino mechanics, or you are mastering it to build something of lasting value.
As Remen's work ultimately proves, the sovereign mind is the mind that knows how to know.
which leaves us with one final lingering thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. We talked deeply about the profound vulnerability of the digital grid and the necessity of defense.
Hmm.
If your digital reality went entirely dark tomorrow, if the green silence hit and the algorithms, the feeds, the RG models, and the search engines just stopped functioning, who is in your analog backup? What concrete knowledge, and more importantly, what deeply trusted human relationships do you hold entirely outside the algorithm? Because when the invisible architecture collapses, the physical foundation you've built with the people around you is the only thing you have left.